Hey, this is Kate McClarnon with Benchmark Realty here in Nashville, Tennessee, and it is week 3 of Industry Insiders. If you're curious about the value of your home, this video is for you. We're going inside the mind of an appraiser. Featuring Clint Walker. So thank you for being here. I know you're an appraiser, but also, full disclosure, you're a real estate agent in the same office as I am at Benchmark. Well, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Can you give just the definition? What is an appraisal for those who might not know?
An appraisal is one person's opinion of value on a given date, and that's pretty much it.
So what are some of the things that will add value to a property that you're appraising?
Principally, the best way to improve value is to do renovations and remodeling that essentially make the house feel younger. So if you've got a 30-year-old house, you could have shag carpet, you could have pink tile in the bathroom, old Formica countertops, and all sorts of stuff that was, great 30 years ago, but now is starting to feel pretty run down, even in a house that's been immaculately maintained. In appraising, one of the things that we do is what's called the effective age. That is different than the actual age, in that a house could be actually 30 years old, but effectively, because of good maintenance or updates or whatever, it could be 15 as far as the effective age. And that number is entirely subjective. We learn in appraising school calculations to put monetary figures on the effective age. We can put a monetary value on each year of effective age if we wanted to. To add value to the house, what you can do is replace floor coverings, replace kitchens. Everybody knows that kitchens and baths bring a high return when you remodel them. When I'm in houses, people like to point out the plantation shutters that they put on, and the new HVAC and new electrical wiring or surround sound they've got. These things are material improvements to the house. They do become part of the real estate in a transaction. In one sense, it's inarguable that they improve the value of the house, but they're also very difficult to quantify in an appraisal, because if you take a house that with plantation shutters and the exact same house without plantation shutters, chances are they sold for the same price.
So what are some of the things that will actually reduce the value of a home?
Boy, there's a lot of things that you can do to reduce the value of a home. The most common factor I see is deferred maintenance. People have, for whatever reason, not kept up the maintenance on the home. There's, rotting wood outside, peeling paint, these sorts of things. Pet damage is constant. I go in houses with scratched up walls, scratched up doors from the dog trying to get out. Those are extremely common. Pets are hard on carpets. They're hard on hardwoods. These sorts of things, they do impact the value. At the end of the report, when you figured out your values on all the different physical features of the house, you have a range of value. So you might have $20,000 or $30,000 of room from your lowest comp to your highest comp. The condition of the house can dictate where the appraiser puts that value within that range. Oh, here's another way people devalue their houses is they remove a bedroom to make a large master closet. That is an instant way to knock your house into a whole new category of comps.
Are you talking about adding a room full of shelving that just represents as a closet, or are we talking about people moving walls?
Both. You say you got two adjacent rooms, a bedroom that's adjacent to the owner's bedroom, and you're not satisfied with the size of the owner's closet, so you want to take up that bedroom. And so you cut a hole between the two and put a door there and leave everything else the same. It's still got a tiny closet within it. It's still got a window in it. Still got a door to the hallway. You haven't really altered the house. And certainly before you put it on the market, you could close up the door that you made for, a few $100s, fix it back up, and it's a bedroom again. But I've seen them where people seal up the window. They take out the closet. They literally transform it into a large closet for the master bedroom. And you have a great master bedroom closet, but you no longer have another bedroom in the house.
Good thing to keep in mind for all the DIY people out there who are breaking down walls and stuff.
Contact your friendly neighborhood agent and ask them about these things before you do it, because agents know this stuff too. They've seen it.
So I'll have folks ask me to pull the comps. I know that realtors and sometimes even homeowners like to kind of throw that word around. Choosing a price range to list a home when you're representing a seller is definitely more complicated than pushing a few buttons in the MLS. Do you have specific guidelines that you work within as an appraiser when you're looking at a subject property?
There are specific guidelines, and they are dictated by the lender, and they're dictated by Fannie Mae. They're dictated by the FHA. Fundamentally, you in an appraisal, when you select comps, you have to what we call bracket the subject, which means if your subject is 1,000 square feet, you have to have something that's a little bit smaller in size, something that's a little bit bigger in size. You need to have the bathrooms bracketed, or at least one with equivalent bathrooms, so that you don't adjust all the way across the board. The objective part is demonstrating through your comps that you have a reasonable basis for calling it something because somebody else has closed on a sale in the past. They paid this for the same house or a comparable house that you can adjust out to be similar in the past. And that really is mostly influenced by the lenders. If you were to hire an appraiser to just appraise your house to give you an idea of what it was going to cost, then the guidelines would be dictated primarily by your appraiser. The ultimate goal is to provide a report that is credible, and I think bracketing probably is the most credible way to come at the comparable sales.
So you mentioned homes that have historically sold for a particular price point comparing to a subject property. Do you also look at homes that are actively listed on the market or maybe who are under contract but haven't closed yet?
Yes, lender guidelines, they typically want one or two active sales in the report. In every report, the appraiser is going to analyze the market that the house is in. So they're going to define a neighborhood that it's in, which is not necessarily the development it's in, but it's a neighborhood, is a larger thing. And then they're going to analyze the market to see if the market's increasing, to see how the inventory is, if there's too much inventory, too little inventory, just the right amount. All these things are supposed to gel together. So if you've got increasing market conditions, and in Nashville, we pretty much have increasing market conditions everywhere in the greater Nashville area, your active sale should be in the report to demonstrate that this house is not an anomaly in its asking price. There's another house on the market looking for the same thing. But then the actual final opinion of value is reconciled to closed sales, not the active.
So where do you find all this data?
We primarily focus on the MLS because the MLS has photographs and additional data that we need for all those comparable sales. We can also use other sources. I start out a lot of my comp searches on the tax record. I use an aerial overlay. I want to start my search right next door to the subject property if possible. Then I have incorporated the school zones, railroad tracks if they're behind it. I've incorporated topography in the site. If I use the house next door, then I can reasonably assume that I've incorporated a lot of different factors that the subject has. The lenders and most guidelines want you to start picking sales that were the most recent closed sales. So they would like you to start within the last 3 months, and then move to 6, and then move to a year at the most. If you go beyond a year, it's allowed, but you need to have a really good reason to have gone beyond a year.
What are some of the misconceptions that you've run up against?
The most common misconception is in pricing. It happens when agents who don't have a lot of experience look at comps, and homeowners look at comps, and they see the house across the street sold for $150 a square foot, which is higher than any other square footage sales price of any house in the neighborhood, and they think their house can sell for that. But the reality is, in real estate, there's a phenomenon called diminishing returns that happens on the size of the house. A 2,000 square foot house is not going to sell for the same square footage in general as a 1,000 square foot house, because these prices get to a point where the market can't tolerate 2,000 square feet at $150 a square foot the way it can tolerate 1,000 square feet at $150 a foot. As the size of the house increases, the price per square foot typically decreases.
Are there any differences in the price per square foot, say the upper floor, the main floor, or even a basement? Do you look at those differently, or are they all the same?
We do. Basements do not bring as much price per square foot as the above grade square footage. Main levels and second levels are all equal. If you got $100 per square feet on the second floor and first floor of a house, the basement typically is going to bring half that.
Even if it's a finished basement that's livable space, heated and cooled, painted, drywall, all of it.
The typically what we see for the finished basement is something around half the value of the main level, and unfinished basement is even less than that.
When it comes to a mortgage and an actual transaction, who's hiring that appraiser? Who's the one who actually picks up the phone to get an appraiser assigned to that particular property?
Yeah, that's a great question. A common misconception. The buyer on a transaction is paying for the appraisal, but it is the lender who is hiring the appraiser. And the appraiser's report is tailored for the lender, not the buyer. A lot of people don't know that the appraiser is required to look at the contract as part of the report. So we're given the contract on every one. Because not only are we required to analyze the purchase price, but we need to analyze the other terms of the contract. Is there a mobile shed included? Is there a washer and dryer included? Are there a gigantic percentage of closing costs included? And all these things are reported back to the lender through the appraisal when we analyze the contract.
So what happens if a home is under contract for, say, $200,000, but the appraiser's opinion of the value, the appraisal comes in at actually maybe $10,000 under? The appraiser says, actually, you know what? It's not 200, it's 190. What happens in that case?
You have a few options. You ask the appraiser to reconsider the value. New comps can be presented. The appraiser would theoretically take a look at the new comps and see if any of them are compelling. Caveat all that and say appraisers don't like changing their values once they're done. So your options are to ask for a reconsideration, which may or may not happen. If it doesn't happen and it's a purchase transaction, our Tennessee contract allows for renegotiation based on the new appraised value, but no one has to give in. The seller does not have to sell for the appraised value. The buyer does not have to pay the difference. The contract can be nullified at that point based on the appraisal contingency.
So to clarify, with the appraisal contingency that Clint is talking about, the buyer of the property is going to put up earnest money. And in our Tennessee contracts, there is a contingency in there, which basically means if the home doesn't appraise, that earnest money would come back to you if the two parties can't come to an agreement on changing the price. So what happens if the reverse is actually the case? What happens if the home is under contract for $200,000, appraiser says, I believe it's worth $210,000. Does that then change the purchase price?
It does not. The buyer gets to just feel a warm feeling in their chest and move on knowing that they got a pretty good deal.
And hopefully you've got an agent who is representing you and guiding you through that process, because for folks who have lived in a home, whether they've lived there 2 years, 10 years, or 30 years, sometimes it's hard to be objective.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's hard to recognize, you know what, that carpet does need to be replaced. And, you know, whether it's folks who are coming to look at the home to potentially buy it, notice it, and kind of turn their nose up, or an appraiser looks like yourself, looks at it and says, maybe it's what we would call deferred maintenance, where probably should have been fixed, but hasn't been fixed yet. But maybe you've lived with it for 20 years and you don't realize how dirty your carpets are, that you can get blind to that. And a great agent is going to come in, and matter of fact, an appraiser too, if you were to hire your own appraiser to come give you their sort of objective opinion, a great agent's going to look at that home, and they're gonna look at it without judgment for you. They're not judging you. They're really just looking at it from a market perspective, what they're seeing in the market, what's normal, what's abnormal, and how you kind of fit into that.
That's exactly right.
Well, thank you for spending so much time with me today, Clint. I know that my viewers, friends, clients all appreciate it. All my people are really enjoying this series, and I'm so glad that you were a part of it.
That's my pleasure. I appreciate you having me.